I'm going to talk quickly about 3 strategies, and remembering that this is an introduction or initial, introduction into these particular strategies. And throughout the rest of your teaching education, your teacher education and your teaching career, you will learn much more about these particular strategies. So the first, of course, is universal design for learning, which is based on the premise of planning to meet all students' learning needs prior to instruction, not just making adjustments afterwards. So universal design for learning is based on the same ideals as universal design in the area of architecture. So if we use ramps to discuss the idea of universal design with buildings, we know that most buildings these days are simply fitted with ramps in the initial stages of construction. We don't build a building these days with just stairs for access, and then when a person with a wheelchair needs to access that building, then put a ramp in later. We simply build our buildings from the beginning with both stairs and ramps, so that if a person in a wheelchair comes along, they can access the building from the beginning. What's really interesting in terms of this idea of universal design is that what we found is that those ramps don't just provide access or additional or supportive access to people in a wheelchair. It also provides access or supportive access to people, for example, mums with prams, or the elderly who use walkers, or people with shopping trolleys. So what we've found is that universal design actually allows us to meet the needs of a whole wide range of people. By putting one strategy into place at the beginning, we meet the needs of a range of people, including people with disability. Universal design for learning is based on that same idea. So it's about providing one strategy that we use, that we include in our instruction from the very beginning, that allows us to meet the needs of a wide range of students, and that may include students with disability. It's a strategy that's designed to eliminate barriers from the very beginning. We eliminate the barriers that stop students from accessing learning without having to know the specific needs of our students. So in terms of universal design for learning, what we're talking about is providing multiple means of engagement. So we're trying to provide multiple means to engage students in learning. We then provide multiple means of representation, so multiple means of how we present our material or the content that we present, and multiple means of action or expression. So we provide options with how our students can then take that material and respond to it. And it's suggested through the UDL guidelines that if we consider these 3 ways of representing our information differently, so if we engage our students in different ways, represent our material in different ways, and use different forms of action and expression for our students to demonstrate what they've learned, in providing multiple ways, we're actually going to reduce the barriers for a whole range of learners. And those learners are going to include our students with disability, or many of our students with disability. Okay, so moving on to differentiation, which is another strategy that is suggested to be very effective. And as you can tell, the whole level or premise of this level of support is based on differentiation. The word is used in both contexts. So differentiation, as you would know, and you should be very familiar with this particular strategy, is a targeted process that involves forward planning, programming and instruction for specific learners. So it involves the use of teaching, learning and assessment strategies that are fair and flexible. So we know that a learner can't access something in one particular way. We differentiate our instruction so that they can access it in a different way. We ensure that it provides an appropriate level of challenge and that it engages our students in meaningful ways. Differentiation very much takes all of those important understandings and pulls them together. So differentiated programming provides students with opportunities to demonstrate in different ways what they know, what they understand, and what they can do at different points of the learning cycle. It also allows them to firstly access their learning through a preferred learning style and in many new ways of learning. It allows students to explore, experiment and engage with the concepts and principles underpinning what they learn, and to develop higher order thinking and creative and critical thinking skills. Because it provides learning in different ways, it allows students to demonstrate their learning in different ways, it helps to make those connections needed and those understandings needed for that higher order thinking. Now, in terms of differentiation, I'm sure that you're familiar with the name Carol N. Tomlinson, who is considered to be a bit of a guru with differentiation. This I find is a very, very useful representation or sort of one-pager that teachers can have next to them to think about how they're actually differentiating, what principles they're using, how they can differentiate, and according to the students' different needs. So we can be thinking about all of those aspects of differentiation or options for differentiation as we work through our planning process. So for example, if we look at the middle section, teachers can consider, okay, so am I differentiating the content that I'm actually providing to students? Am I going to differentiate the process? So the process that I use to teach and the process of how students take in and make sense of that content. Or am I going to differentiate the product? So that is how students are demonstrating what they know and understand and can do. Is that what I'm going to differentiate? Or am I going to consider differentiation in terms of the environment, the climate of the particular classroom that I'm working within? Or maybe it's a case for some students I need to differentiate in each of those different sections. So it's a really useful way to start thinking about where and how we are using differentiation in our teaching process. Okay, we're going to move on quickly to explicit instruction. And again, this is something that you should be very familiar with, and you certainly should be familiar with the names Archer and Hughes, or Dr. Anita Archer, who again is considered to be a real expert in the area of explicit instruction. So explicit instruction is a direct process of instructional design and practice in which students are guided through the learning process with a series of supports and scaffolds. Explicit instruction is not necessarily directed, however, at individual students, but it's an instructional practice that we use class-wide. So within this, student mastery is supported by practice and feedback. Instruction begins with a clear purpose and rationale for learning, and during instruction, students are provided with clear expectations and demonstrations of these expectations. Now, as you know, because as I said, hopefully you really are familiar with explicit instruction, there are 16 elements of explicit instruction, and they exist within 4 key components of lesson planning. So looking at our lesson content, our lesson design, our lesson delivery, and lesson practice. And you can see how some of those elements or components link really clearly back to where we actually differentiate. So within these 16 elements of explicit instruction, some of which I have included here, you'll notice that there are a lot of elements that have actually been discussed throughout the course as being very important for inclusive education. So the idea of breaking down complex skills into smaller units, reviewing prior knowledge and skills before we begin instruction, knowing where students are at and reviewing what they already know, providing guided and supported practice and an adequate range of examples and non-examples, helping our students to organise knowledge and providing lots of practice, lots of opportunities for practice. And within explicit instruction, it talks about distributed and cumulative practice and the differences between the two. But certainly multiple opportunities for practice are key for many of our students with disability. So these 16 elements are really key aspects of quality differentiated teaching. So what we're suggesting in this part of this module is that if we start off with quality differentiated teaching practice, we use the ideals of universal design for learning as we're planning. We differentiate according to our specific students' needs, and we use explicit instruction and consider these 16 elements of explicit instruction in our activities and our unit plans, what we're suggesting is that that will actually meet or support the needs of many of our students with disability without needing to do anything additional or extra for the individual. So these particular strategies are based about supporting all students in our classroom, and by supporting all students in our classroom, we support many of our students with disability.